Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I'm your host, Adam Portress, and joining me today in his B-Boy days, he was known as the Sandworm, Sweet Shanta Kovacs from the internet.
Spicy.
And speaking of dancing, he claims that he invented the Sandwalk, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and the slow blade isn't the only thing that penetrates the shields, my friends.
Oh, yeah. Bruce has 3 kids, so he knows all about this. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Strap on your No Fear shirts and let the spice flow, because it doesn't matter if you saw it in the theater or on HBO. Just kidding. There's only one right answer for that one. But either way, you most assuredly had no excuse not to watch Dune. That is the movie that we're going to be talking about this week from Director Denis Villeneuve. But before we do that, we do want to say a big thank you to those who support us over at patreon.com/HMP. Doesn't matter what level you support us at, pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone, all of that good stuff. And, of course, get to vote on a movie that we watch each month. And we'll be going over all of those people, executive producers and the icon levels and all that kind of good stuff next week. And if you want to get in on that action, just head on over. Links are in the show notes, as always. And if you can't support the show financially and everything, just share the show with a friend or review us on iTunes. We got a 5-star review right here, a.k.a. a humdinger.
Humdinger.
This one comes to us from Ben from Ohio. It's 5 stars, and it's entitled, "This show is all right."
I like to think of it like this. This show is all right.
All right. I've been listening to you guys since Preacher Season 1. That's a show that went to pot, but you guys are pretty entertaining, so I checked out this podcast and listened to all the other top 10 podcasts on the weekly drive to and from work. Always entertaining. This show is whizzer. That's how you know Ben is actually
he's old school.
An old school fan when he throws in the wizard. That's a guy who's been listening for a hot minute. So, Ben, thank you for your review there on iTunes. If you'd like to review us on iTunes, steal your mama's iPhone and drop us a review, 5 stars, a.k.a. Humdinger.
Humdinger.
We'd really appreciate that. Yeah, man. So we're talking about Dune here today. So I think we're going to have a whole heck of a lot to talk about, because this bad boy is massive. So let's go ahead and take a listen to the trailer for Dune.
The outsiders ravage our land. Their cruelty to my people is all I've known.
So you're going tomorrow?
Yes, I'm going tomorrow with the advance team.
I'd like you to take me with you.
Are you trying to get me court-martialed?
Can I trust you with something? I've been having dreams about a girl fallen in battle. Felt like a vision.
Dreams make good stories, but everything important happens when we're awake.
To the future of House Atreides.
You have to be ready.
There is no call we do not answer. There is no faith that we betray.
They're not human, they're brutal.
What if I'm not dead? You'll still be the only thing I ever needed you to be.
Come on!
My son. I know you.
Tonight the bloodline ends forever. Kill them all.
This is an extermination. They're picking my family off one by one. Only together can we stand a chance.
Let's fight like demons.
It's not safe for you here.
I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer.
Alrighty, that was the trailer for Dune, out in theaters and HBO Max this week. You know what time it is.
It's time for Bruce's Comic Book Connection.
Bruce, what do you got for us this week?
Well, today we're going to start off talking about automobile maintenance. Because when I was growing up, my dad always had a lot of late model used cars around. You know, he'd buy them specifically to resell. And sometimes these cars would need a little work done. And it just so happened that my uncle, who's my dad's younger brother, was a mechanic. And my dad would kind of kill two birds with one stone by having my uncle work on his old cars, and he would send me to help. So this would get the car in shape to sell while it simultaneously got me out of my dad's hair for the day. Now, luckily, my uncle was a patient guy because, and this is going to shock you guys, but I was neither very good nor very interested in automobile maintenance.
What?
But one thing you see plenty of when you're working on cars with your mechanic uncle in the 80s are Shilton manuals. Are you guys familiar with Shilton manuals?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, am I? No.
They were a line of books published by Shilton that told you things like how to set the timing on an AMC pacer because, yeah, we were ballers back then. So why am I talking about Shilton manuals? Well, it's because the story that would become Dune was first published in serialized form in a sci-fi magazine. And when Frank Herbert decided to make it into a novel, he shopped it around to every publisher imaginable. For the big five publishers, Dune was too much like fantasy to be marketable as sci-fi, too much like sci-fi to be marketed as fantasy, and they all passed. So did all the non-big five publishing houses, and then somehow the manuscript for Dune came across the desk of a publisher at Shilton. And for some reason, that guy thought that Dune was a good fit for the company whose all-time bestseller was How to Fix the Brakes on an Oldsmobile Dynamic 88 so your whole family doesn't die screaming on the way to grandma's house. It's a riveting read, by the way. And Shilton entered into the world of speculative fiction, which I imagine meant that if a kid wanted to buy a copy of Dune, he had to go to the Western Auto and grab one from the shelf next to the radio flyer wagons. And a big shout out to the Western Auto in Jackson, Kentucky, because that's, as many people know, where I bought my first machete. 7-year-old Bruce walked in with absolutely no adult supervision, gave the guy behind the counter $12 worth of quarters, and walked out with a shiny new machete. People, that's how serial killers are made. And speaking of serial killers, Adam, do you have a list?
Yeah, I do, because if that comic book connection wasn't enough for you, let me sell everybody on this new version of Dune, because this movie has everything. Moody VO, Crazy Dreams, The Voice. We got pocket projectors, space drugs / gas, magnificently bearded Oscar Isaac, a beardless Jason Momoa, now with 33% less handsome. Dave Bautista showing you that he's the same as he ever was. Josh Brolin doing who knows what, as is Javier Bardem. Stellan Skarsgård is Jabba the Hutt. We also got Arrakis plus Atreides. That'll never get confusing. Good job there, Herbert. Names like Duncan, Idaho, Jessica and Paul, classic sci-fi names. The ever-so-rare Good Father in a movie. Very strange to see those. We got the Hand in the Box game, Moving Days, a buffalo head that never stops popping up, bagpipes, mosquito, X-wings, space spiders the size of a dog, a parasol. We got throat chanting, throat slicing, stabbing, worm eating, tooth chomping, naked table sitting, desert ninjas, sweaty-eared sand rats, and it doesn't hold your hand but every now and then does blurt out something that they've already shown us, making you feel quite dumb. We've got Hans Zimmer doing his best Johann Jorgensen, and I'm here for it. And the best in the sci-fi director that no one else is doing anything quite like Denis Villeneuve. This movie's got everything. My guess is, though, like, Bruce, have either of you actually read the book? Because you might imagine, I have not.
That was going to be my first question, is if anybody's read the book, listened to the audiobook, consumed anything other than the David Lynch movie.
I read the first, I want to say 3 books. It could be 4, but definitely the first 3.
That's pretty impressive, because that's a long line. That's a lot of books.
It is. It's one of those books that sneaks up on you too, because like you'll be reading it and it's okay. You know, you're reading it and you're like, well, this might not be my thing. And then you realize that you're, like almost 200 pages into it, and you're like, oh, okay. I am actually liking this book apparently. And then you do, and then that was my experience. And then it got to a point where that I was so into it that that it was kind of like oh man, I can't even imagine being able to follow this, but like from here, like if you were just the first time you were gonna, and that's the way Dune is. I mean, there's like, I can't remember how many books there is now, but there's a ridiculous amount of Dune books, and at this point now, I don't think anyone has read all of them except for the Herbert family.
Brian Herbert, he's read them all.
Yeah, but maybe that's it, because I don't know anyone who is like, oh no, they're still amazing. Like no one ever says that now.
And it's kind of like if you're going to be a science fiction person, like if you want to be a science fiction person, there are 2 book series that are like homework. If you want to go beyond just watching Star Wars and occasional Star Trek and say, I like science fiction, 2 book series that you got to read that sometimes feel like homework. One is Isaac Asimov's Foundation, and the other one is Dune. And they are kind of like, Dune is a direct response to Foundation in some ways. They're like the 2 opposite ends of science fiction. Yeah. And Foundation, of course, came first. Frank Herbert's book came second, and it's kind of a response to what Asimov thought. But yeah, they can both be tough to read because you feel like it's homework, and it's not like you're just reading it because you want to. But I do think, for me at least, I think Dune is like a little more intimidating because the Foundation books are at least small, like not nearly as many words as Dune has. And I guess I'm beating around the bush, but I have not read Dune.
That's surprising.
But here's what happened when I was a kid, and this will inform a lot about me and a lot of like what I like to do. But when I was a kid, the library was having a used book sale. And they gave me for free, because it was used and we're going to throw it out, this thing called the Dune Encyclopedia that was like the size of a Metropolitan phone book. It was like a reference book. It was paperback, kind of looked like one of those big oversized Marvel Essentials, even the same kind of paper like the newspaper print. And I love reading stuff in that style. And I read that thing cover to cover like 3 times. So I know every single thing that happens in Dune. I know almost all of the lore. I mean, it's been some years, so I'm sure I forgot some stuff, but it's like I can sit and talk about what makes Dune such an incredible story, and then talk in great detail and then admit I haven't actually read Dune, but I love world building. It's like, for me, there's that book called The World of Ice and Fire. It's like a companion reference book to go along with Game of Thrones series that Martin wrote. And I prefer just like sitting and reading page after page about like what the history is of this particular land that you almost never hear about in the main book, and like who these people are here. And like that, to me, I'm the guy that grew up. We had old fashioned encyclopedias in the house, and I would just sit and read those for fun. Like, but this Dune thing, it was like reading a very, very large Wikipedia article on every possible subject in Dune. And that made me fall in love with the universe.
Now, you've
been tested, right?
Yeah. We want to make sure that you're not broken.
We know that you've been tested. I know that you have.
I don't know that I have.
I thought that you're talking about. I thought that you had. I thought that we had this conversation once before.
No, I've taken many tests, and I'm always in the minimum top 10 percentile.
A census tried to taste.
I even got an A+ on my blood test.
I'm wondering if you're gonna ace the spectrum test as well. Because I cannot state this enough.
Yeah.
The thing that makes Dune awesome is the interpersonal relationships of the characters. It's not now. It's not the. It's not the treaties. It's not the treaties that came to be, and then skirmishes that came to be.
Hey, listen! If George Lucas taught us anything, it's that trade disputes and all this kind of crap is right up everybody's alley.
Yeah, what was that reference book like, Bruce? I wonder.
I'll tell you what. It described how the Fremen were able to practice birth control through sheer willpower over their testicles.
That's pretty good. Okay.
Oh no, you won't.
That's something you might not pick up on in the novel.
You definitely get. That's 1 point for you.
They're gonna wait to part 2 to really explore that more, I think.
Learn because
can I say a little bit of a semi-saucy, made-up, scientific-sounding word?
Oh, please! It's encouraged here.
They practice ejaculation.
Oh,
It goes the other direction somehow.
Yeah, there you go.
So they don't make babies if they don't want to.
That's for me.
Their
I
rectums
love
are
that
black
encyclopedia.
holes.
Yeah.
Mini black holes.
Yeah.
So so Adam, everybody knows you didn't read
Correct.
Dune, but I'm guessing that you probably saw that terrible movie from the 80s, that just truly awful movie. I'm guessing you've seen that.
You would be surprised. I have not, actually.
Now,
Really?
Here's what I want to say, though, about that movie, Sean, is as a whole, it absolutely fails, but it has some awesome, like 5-minute, 10-minute sequences all throughout it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Because
So, like, as a kid, I didn't appreciate that it was awful. I just thought, man, this looks cool and that looks cool. And while Sting is wearing metal panties, and like it was just, I watched it as a series of vignettes. It was like watching a music video to me. I didn't really care that the story was nuts. Like, it just could not tell the story in the amount of time.
Are you trying to tell me that David Lynch has a hard time telling a very cohesive story that everyone can follow and understand and go along with? I'm shocked.
Well, I understand that David Lynch can't write a story, but he didn't have to write this one.
Yeah. But he's got to do what he's got to do. I tried like a couple years back where it was just like, okay, I'm finally going to sit down and watch Dune. This is a thing that everybody was talking about. And it's one of those that like you make the mistake of trying to start something late and it's like, oh, like 5 minutes in you go, I'm not ready for this right now. And then just never really came back to it. And this loses me some points with a couple of nerdy people, but I am not the biggest Lynch fan. There's a couple of things that I like, but I'm not a huge Lynch guy at all.
I mean, I like the visuals of Lynch. Like, everyone likes the visuals of Lynch, but when it comes to making, like, he doesn't need to be given a bunch of money to make a movie. You know what I mean? Like, give him some low budget thing and he'll knock it out of the park. But you don't give him $60 million. But
like, if you look at like Elephant Man, you know he can do it.
Sure, or a street story.
He can do it if Mel Brooks is looking over his shoulder. I mean, he had a pretty seasoned guy helping him with that.
Yeah, it's true.
But so it's possible.
So then I've got to ask the next question. So we've gotten past Lynch's Dune. So have you guys seen the sci-fi series Dune? The
I have
miniseries?
not.
Only heard tale.
Okay, so I've seen that as well. And as far as the book to movie ratio goes, it's a whole lot closer. And it's even closer than the movie is, in my opinion.
Was that a mini series kind of thing?
It was.
Okay.
It was.
Yeah, so they probably had 4 hours to work with, right? 4 or 5 hours.
It's probably more than that. And also there is a sequel miniseries called Children of Dune, which came out, like early 2000s. And it stars a very young, I always forget his name. He played the second Charles Xavier.
McAvoy? McAvoy?
Yes. McAvoy is Muad'Dib, is Paul in these miniseries.
I think that's excellent casting, man.
He's
young
great.
McAvoy, because this is what, 14, 15 years ago, I'm guessing?
Yeah, about that. I mean, 20 at this point now.
Wow.
Like closer to 20. And it's, look, they made it for no money. Like the movie, the miniseries has no budget because it's a sci-fi thing. But it will suck you in. Like, it does suck you in. It's like, oh, hey, this is not nearly the train wreck that I thought that this was going to be. And so I do like, look, I might hate them now, quite honestly. But at the time, I was pleasantly surprised at how good it came out. All things considered, it's one of those things.
Because this was one of those things that by and large people said was almost like an unfilmable kind of thing. Very Lord of the Rings-esque in that it's this big epic tome. There's so much that's going on in it that it's difficult to actually put that to screen, specifically in something that's, more short form, if you will. And this is like...
Yeah, I think the biggest obstacle to whether or not you could film it was just the size of the story, because as you see in this movie, you really don't have any good stopping points along the way. So before Lord of the Rings, nobody even tries to do this movie right. But then Lord of the Rings, and even that, the books end. So you kind of have stopping points, even though they were never intended to end where they do. It was supposed to be one big book, and it was too hard to bind something that thick back then. But yeah, that's the problem, I think, with Dune being unfilmable, is just there's no obvious stopping points along the way, and you just can't put it all into 3 hours or less.
Well, this is what I was told from someone at work who was the book reader and everything, and he kind of was asking, like, where does stuff stop? And I told him, he's just like, yeah, that's pretty much kind of the first book, if you will. It's like one book, but it's really distinctive, like three kind of acts, if you will.
No, your friend is wrong, because it's about halfway to 3/4 through the first book, this movie.
And just to compare and contrast, I said there were two classics of science fiction that everybody kind of has to read for homework. One is Dune. The other is Foundation. Foundation has 8 seasons outlined, and Foundation is like a third total pages. Like all 3 Foundation books, probably less than the first Dune book. So man, just to compare and contrast, well, how much, you get Goyer on the job, you need 8 seasons.
But how many, I mean, Foundation has so many ideas in it, whereas Dune is more of a epic.
And I'm afraid that what I'm going to end up doing is talking more about Dune itself than Dune the movie that we're here to review. But yeah, there's a whole lot of there's a reason why Foundation is more of a foundation. If you're looking to find a character to identify with and let on Foundation, forget it, because Asimov, the whole thesis of Foundation is that it's not individuals that create history or individuals that create anything. It is the environment that creates it, and the individuals are just products of it. So there's no like character that carries through for any particular length of time necessarily. And Dune was like a response to that, because they're even when people are talking about history, sort of 2 theories are like the environmental theory and the great man theory. The great man theory almost thrown out the window by now, but the great man or great villain theory is like a person comes along and changes the world. And then the environmental theory is the environment creates the right situation for someone to pop up into that role. So for like the great man theory says, if it weren't for Genghis Khan, the Mongol Empire never would have existed. And then the environmental theory is like, well, if it wasn't Genghis Khan, it would have been somebody else doing the exact same thing because all the factors were there. You follow me?
Yeah.
So Asimov was saying the individuals don't matter. It's like a chemical reaction. You put all the parts in place and you can't stop it. Whereas they go the other direction. No, we're going to have a Messiah story here, and we're going to borrow heavily on theology and religion. And we're going to show that it is the great man that causes things to happen and not the other way around.
Well, I mean, and that is what Dune is, right? I mean, it's from nuts to stern. That's exactly what it is.
And that's why, like at the time in the 60s when it came out, it was so much more Lord of the Rings than it was Foundation, that people didn't know what to do with it, And I think personally, it's one of the most influential stories in speculative fiction, because it might be the one book that is responsible for the phrase speculative fiction, because you used to never talk about science fiction and fantasy in the same breath, but now people realize they're kind of the same thing now. And all the elements are kind of Campbellian there with the whole rise of Paul Atreides and creating, the monster that you can't control and all that sort of thing. And when I love fantasy novels right now, and I read that more than anything. And I see Dune in so many of my favorite storylines in fantasy. I think it's probably influenced fantasy more than science fiction. And of course, you can see that that marriage of sci-fi and fantasy that works so well for Frank Herbert also kind of inspired Lucas a little bit too.
More than a little.
There's so much in this that you can point to and just go like, oh, look at what everybody, kind of took from.
I don't want to spoil things too much, and it's not a direct 1-to-1, but there's a little Anakin Luke thing that'll show up in the next movie too.
But yeah, I think really ultimately having the right director on board to do this movie was going to be the key, and Denis Villeneuve coming in being kind of the guy who really is making adult science fiction now. It hasn't been. Here's the thing. He's made a lot of really great movies. Unfortunately, they just haven't been seen enough. They don't tend to make a ton of box office. And
Adam, I'm guessing that you have the same thought that I do when it comes to Denis Villeneuve, which is that I've seen every movie of his since Prisoners. And, the thing with him as a director is that you might not like everything that he makes, but it's definitely interesting, and it's definitely something that holds your attention for the entire time. Like you may walk out of the movie going, man, like that just wasn't my jam. But you did pay attention the entire time while watching it.
Yeah, you may not have loved Blade Runner 2049, but you watch the whole thing and just go, because it grabs your attention and it just doesn't let go. And especially being like slower sci-fi and everything, that's a tough thing. That's a tough road to hoe these days.
And when I saw Blade Runner 2049, I remember having this thought like I don't think this is a good movie, and I love it. Like it was this weird kind of disconnect in my head. It's like, if you ask me, I would say I don't like Denis Villeneuve, but I like all of his movies that I've seen because they interest me. But I think when I'm saying it's not a good movie, I'm saying to myself, this is not going to find a broad audience.
Right. Yeah. No, there's a lot about this while watching it and seeing a bunch of reviews of people online. And there is a large group of people who look at this movie and say it is wildly boring. And here's the thing.
Sure.
They're not necessarily wrong, because it's not like and I told somebody this when I was selling tickets for my theater this week, and people were asking, they weren't quite sure what they were going to go see because stuff was filling up, and they go, well, how's Dune? Is it like Star Wars? I go, if you don't like Star Wars, you're really not going to like this, because
that's a good way of saying it.
Or I would say if you love Star Wars, you might not like this.
It's exactly. Well, it's kind of the same thing too, but like this lady was with her guy and she was just like, oh, is it like Star Wars? Like, she was basically saying, I'm not a huge fan of Star Wars. Well, it's like, if you're not a huge fan of Star Wars, chances are, as your average moviegoer, you're definitely not going to like this, because there's not that.
I would disagree.
I
think that if you don't like Star Wars, you should still keep an open mind about it.
I think you should.
I think you're in more trouble if you're like, I love Star Wars and Star Trek, I want to go see what inspired them.
But here's the thing, though. Yeah, like you're imagining a person who's like you. You're not imagining a person that's like your average moviegoer. Your average moviegoer, you don't go, listen, this is 2.5 hours and you're going to get to the end of it and you're going to be like, where's the rest of the movie? And it ain't going to be there for probably at least another 2 years.
I think you know what I will say is you're right in to a degree, because I'm assuming your average moviegoer loves Star Wars.
No, these are people that show up and don't know
like Star Wars. The one that says I don't like Star Wars is kind of a hipster or a snob or something, and they're going to love this.
No, they're just not a nerd. That's all.
Well, Denis Villeneuve has the best line for Dune, which is that he said that he was trying to make the movie of the book that he loved as a kid.
Yes,
and he described Dune as Star Wars for adults, and it's interesting because I didn't read that line until after I saw his version of Dune, and he is very successful because that is what he has made here. You need to have complete. It grabs your attention if man, I don't know how to say this without sounding like
I wouldn't just say it because I think we may disagree here. And this
come on, Snobby, let's get it.
No, I want to hear what you say, Sean, because maybe we are going to agree. Sometimes I misread where you're going with it.
He makes everything beautiful, and everything has a purpose in all of his movies. Like even Sicario is that way, where if you see something in the background, it is there for a reason. Like it was well thought out, well considered. This is what should be here. And so when you see something like the bullhorns, which seems so ridiculous when you're watching it, but then you understand, oh, okay, now I know why they're there. And so it's purposeful. Everything about this movie is purposeful, down to the fighting styles of the houses. Like the Atreides fighting style is so different from why am I forgetting their name?
Atreides or Harkonnen?
Harkonnen. The Harkonnen, like their fighting styles are so different, and that it's just so well thought out and well planned, and that's why I like watching his movies, is for that reason.
Now, a couple of things here I want to say. First off, I think if Villeneuve who I don't like, I'm not a fan of, but I think if he's able to complete his vision and make whatever number of movies he thinks is adequate to tell the story he wants to tell, and he stops there and they don't like hand it off mid-movie to somebody else, Richard Donner style, you know, I think if he gets to tell his story and then he gets to stop when he's done, I think we're going to have a whole generation of like people that are about 13 or 14 now that this is going to be one of their all-time favorite movie series. I think this is done really well. I think the same thing that captured people about the early seasons of Game of Thrones, I think the same things that Peter Jackson did for The Hobbit, or for the Lord of the Rings, not The Hobbit, but for the Lord of the Rings with his movies. I think Villeneuve stands to do this with Dune, because I think this is a beautiful movie that's going to bring people in that might not necessarily even like sci-fi. And I could only imagine having something like this before me as a kid. And then the kind of thing that a couple years later, you watch it and you see it through an older set of eyes, and you watch it again as an adult and you see it again. I could see this doing for Dune what Peter Jackson did for Tolkien.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. There's certainly the possibility for that coming down the line if indeed they let him do this. And it seems that it's being successful enough. I think this is on track to being his most profitable film yet. And Warner Brothers itself is frankly always kind of looking for another thing. Like ever since they lost Harry Potter, they always want something.
Well, they didn't lose it. It just
that's what I'm saying. But it's not there anymore. So they've always been kind of like because that was a great
you're not
money
counting
maker.
The Fantastic Beasts franchise.
No, well, see,
red hot commodity.
No, they haven't been kicking off, oddly enough.
Yeah,
but they've been looking for that.
The writer's not doing them any favors.
They've been looking for that thing to kind of fill some blank and everything. And at this point, this movie cost $160 million to make. Which, by the way,
it looks more expensive than that.
Way more expensive than that. This movie looks like it just cost $1 billion, and right now they're over 200 million internationally and domestically right now. So like there's with whatever, and that's with this premiering on HBO as well. So I think that this is definitely at least going to get one more. I think if they were smart, just to kind of skipping ahead for half a second, we'll get into all the other stuff. But I think if they're smart, they would do this in 3 pieces. From how this feels,
but they're gonna do it in 2 because that was Villeneuve's.
I think that's what I think that's what they say. But I think if they just go, would you like to make this a proper thing?
Well, the question is, does he go ahead and make a Dune Messiah cycle?
And here's the other part: is that there's a TV show coming to HBO Max, which is based on Dune. Like the world of Dune. I think it's called like the Sisters.
Ooh, I hope it's based on that encyclopedia I read, because that was good.
It is. It's totally based on that. It's just a series of flashing numbers.
I would so love it if it was just a talking head explaining like all the different subjects.
This is perfect. This is perfect. My robot brain desires food.
So I just tell the first book, and the first book I think is built beautifully because it ends just as the feeling of a bigger, more menacing problem is arising. I don't want to spoil too much, but I just want to say it's like you feel like Frankenstein has created a monster that he can no longer control. And that was meant to be the end. And I think it's a beautiful ending, and it's a beautiful thought to have that like it's just left in that position. But moviegoers are absolutely not going to want to stop there if they're loving these first 2 movies, right? I mean, do you agree with that, Sean?
I do. One of the things that this movie gets really right, and a lot of sci-fi movies don't understand, like the people behind it are so into the lore of it that they don't get the thing about a lot of sci-fi is that like it's cool. Like this version of Dune is very, very cool. You want to participate in this world because it's cool. You look cool being part of Dune. It's one of those things where it's the difference between the Apple TV show Foundation and this, which is that the Apple TV show of Foundation is something that I do watch irregularly, but I do watch it. But there's nothing cool about it. Like no one is going to be like, man, That's what I'm going to go for as Halloween.
I mean, have you ever read Foundation, the Foundation trilogy?
I have not.
Isaac Asimov was an idea guy. He was not really a very good writer. They really feel like they're written almost by an 8th grader who's like got this grand idea and he's just almost narratively summary telling you the idea. But like the dialogue is not human like or believable at all.
We call that a George Lucas as well.
Yeah, totally he Asimov is able to make his books so short because he absolutely believes in tell don't show. But still the ideas are so phenomenal, particularly for like 1940 something when he's writing this stuff, that's why it lives on. But Asimov was an idea guy, not a writer.
Right. But that's why you got Philip
hard
K.
to
Dick
film
because he is a writer.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why like Foundation also, I mean, Dune, we talked about why that was considered unfilmable. Foundation for the same reason that it's like, this is just like Foundation feels like two people sitting around having a drink and saying, man, what if this happened in the future? Yeah. And what if that happened? But there's no real story there. It's just like, what if this is the way the world works? But anyway, back to Dune. Yeah. I agree that this is beautiful. It's cool. I think that you don't even have to have a laser like focus on the story. I think things like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones have made people familiar enough with the slow burn that they're not going to get bored with this like they might have in 1994. And I think that I know Villeneuve doesn't like it, but I think the simultaneous release is going to help more people get exposed to it that maybe wouldn't go to sit in the theater for 2.5 hours. But like the 15-year-old who's like, it's Sunday afternoon, I wonder what's on HBO, will be watching this, which is how I saw David Lynch's Dune about 17 times, was at my cousin's house on HBO.
Right.
So I think a whole lot of the parts are here for this to be, and, you know, I don't like to speak in hyperbole, but for this to be one of the greatest film franchises of all time.
Yeah. I mean, it's to me, it felt like the potential was certainly there, and I think a lot of it, like I knew so little about this movie going in. I was kind of astounded at like, oh, this person shows up. I don't even know that I knew that Oscar Isaac was in this movie. I'm going to be quite honest with you.
Let's talk about the casting, because I think part of why this casting is so awesome is that Denis Villeneuve is kind of a cool director, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think people want to take his calls.
Well, it's not just that he's a cool director. It's also that that actors trust him to make them look correct and look good, because the stuff that's coming out of these actors' mouths is working because of the way that Villeneuve shoots, but also the performances are just amazing. I cannot think of a single like standout bad performance in this entire movie.
And of the three of us, I'm the only one who I think qualifies as a dyed-in-the-wool Jason Momoa fan, but I think you guys can appreciate Duncan Idaho here, right?
He is really good in this movie. This is his best performance in my opinion, because he is subtle. Like the things that he is doing are subtle on this show. And he did have a little bit of subtlety on Game of Thrones, but he
also didn't speak English.
I was about to say that it helps when you don't speak the language.
He was speaking Hudese or something. I don't know.
Right. And so to have, it's almost like he had forgotten that that's what he was doing in Game of Thrones until this, because there's a lot of asides. There's a lot of quiet moments with this character. He was the big surprise to me of, oh, wow, he's really doing Idaho justice, where he's not. I don't know what it is about Jason Momoa. A lot of the times it feels like he just shows up to set and just says things out loud.
If you look at that Aquaman trailer thingy that they showed at the DC thing, that's what I imagine life is like with him all the time. Just showing up, giving you the shaka bra, and then going into whatever the day's filming is.
I don't think he said "my man" a single time.
Not a one. It's very strange. But now, it is good for him that he's actually doing this. But at the same time, too, it feels like a character that he would kind of play. This guy who goes out on his own and, is wanting to lead this group and everything. Of course, he's going to be that gung-ho. It fits his character that we know of him, now, the types of character that he plays.
Having never seen the David Lynch movie, having never read Dune, I'm sure you've heard of Duncan Idaho before, right?
No. Dunkin' Donuts
is about as far. You had not heard of Duncan Idaho because people who aren't familiar with Dune oftentimes have still heard of Duncan Idaho. I think he might be the most famous character, even more than Paul Atreides. And then they see Dune or they read Dune, and what they don't understand is he's kind of like the Boba Fett of Dune.
Yeah.
Like everybody saw the Boba Fett armor and they loved him because of how the armor looked, but he's not actually in the original trilogy very much.
Not much of a character going on there, no.
And I think the biggest part of Duncan Idaho's success is he might have like the coolest name in all of science fiction. Like once you hear that name, it gets stuck in your head. But a lot of people are shocked that he dies off so quickly. In, you know, when you throw in things like Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, and whatever those other books are that come after it, he's in such a small part of it, and he's probably got the most name recognition of any character. Mm-hmm. So Momoa, I thought, was a good casting choice because Momoa is kind of like that. He's like really famous, and people kind of like him, and then they go watch Aquaman, and they're like, well.
And here's the thing, though. I really think I sincerely hope that him being in there sells this movie to people that normally would not watch this movie.
Well, I think that's what the casting did. Yeah. You know, there's so much, for lack of a better term, stunt casting in this actual movie that, you know, putting Batista and Momoa and lady from Mission Impossible movies in there, and the kid that is that looks like a lady but is actually a boy, like, you know, like having all of these people in there.
Are you talking about Zendaya?
No.
I was like, she is a girl, man.
No, I'm talking.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm talking about Paul Atreides.
Oh, the guy from Little Women.
Timothy Chalamet, everybody. Come on. I was waiting for everybody to get it, but no one was.
Sean, in your mind, did you ever picture Paul Atreides so diminutively?
No, but
it works beautifully, though, doesn't it? Because I never pictured him like this either. But it's him next to Duncan Idaho. You really get the dynamic way more than when Kyle MacLachlan was looking all handsome and buff next to that 45-year-old looking social studies teacher that played Duncan Idaho in Lynch's movie.
Yes, and you know, having Timothy Chalamet play him the way that he is playing him, where he is not meek. He's never a meek character, even from the get of go. Whereas I think that's where people would want him to go with it, and he never does. There's something so much more interesting about everyone's performance in this than what they're actually doing. I will tell you, my buddy, who has been my friend for, we're going on like 40 years here. He is a huge Dune fan, much bigger than I am. And he said that the one thing he could not stand is the lady from the Mission Impossible movies,
Rebecca Ferguson.
Thank you. Rebecca Ferguson plays that character, and she's just always crying in the movie. He's like, I can't stand it because that is not who that character is, and he knows Dune far, far better than I do, and so I believe him. That character would not be crying nearly as much as she is.
I thought like the only time that I can really remember her crying, just like when he's in the hand in the box scene. Outside of that, I don't really.
Yeah, well, my impression is like she's the toughest character we meet, even tougher than Duncan.
I think that's
when we
true.
see her take everybody out with the voice. You know, Garth Ennis maybe owes a check to Frank Herbert for that one.
Checks in the mail, he says. But so, I thought it was great. I thought her performance was really good, and just.
I think, look, man. I think between the three things that you have for this movie, I think, Bruce, you're right. But it might be one of those slow builds, like John Carpenter's The Thing, where it takes people a long time to figure out, oh, this is actually like a quiet masterpiece, like that kind of thing. Yeah, and it could take that long because the performances are all perfect. The direction is perfect. There's so much thought into everything. And the other thing that I want to talk about is just how wonderful the art direction is in this movie.
Yes.
It is so unbelievably perfect to the point where it's the thing that I said earlier, where every single thing in every single shot is so well thought out that it just makes me shake my head. Where, you know, how much time could have possibly gone into that one thing, and not in a George Lucas way, where it's like, I can't make a decision on that. Get back to me later on that one. It's more of like, let's do our research and make this look right.
Yeah, if you listen to the audio commentary for Attack of the Clones, 3/4 of that is, this is something we decided to do later in post. And it's unbelievable how much of that movie was not planned out. And it was all green screen and stuff. It's just insane. But this, like, they made stuff. You can just see that there's obviously CGI, but there's a lot of physical, actual stuff in this movie as well. And you can just tell. I don't know how it cost $160 million because it looks twice as much as that.
Adam, as a Dune outsider, are there any questions you have for somebody like Sean, who's read the books, or me, who has a literal encyclopedic knowledge of the world? Like, for real, because there are questions I'm dying to answer, but I don't know who's asking them.
Well, here's what's interesting for me, because I watched this in the theater in RPX, which, by the way, if you have an RPX theater, make sure all the seats are bolted down 100%, because my theater was a little bit jacked up. And when
chairs were flying,
these bass notes hit, and you heard a brrr, like okay, something's broken.
It sounded like a NASCAR pit crew changing the tires.
It was really bad. And when they played a Michael Bay trailer before that movie, that bass was just like, I thought I was gonna die. It's like, this is
it Transformers 7?
No, it's this movie called Ambulance with Jake Gyllenhaal that looks boss. I'm excited for that.
So did you understand Dave Desmation? How do you say his name? Desmation?
Desmalchin.
Dalmatian,
yes.
Did you understand anything about his character and what his role was?
I wasn't 100% sure. Like, I think I'm to understand that the people with the little black thing on their lip and everything are, like, at least somewhat robotic.
And not robotic at all. You're going to see that there are no robots in the world of Dune. There are no computers in the world of Dune. So some people train their minds to work like computers, and they're called mentats or something like that. And that's what Dave Desmation is, and that's what the older black gentleman is that works for House Atreides. They each have their own house computer. And what I love about Dune, because there's this idea that he's creating like a Middle Ages kind of society that's set far, far in the future. Like, they have spaceships that can travel light years in an instant, but they still have feudalism and they fight with knives and swords, and he finds great ways to explain it all. But in the world of Dune, they basically survive Skynet. So at some point in time, just think the entire plot of the Terminator happened. Humans won, and after that, they said no more computers, no more artificial intelligence. We're going to rely on human power from here on out, and found ways to enhance their brains. And spice, of course, is a big part of that.
And so after I watched in the theater, I did watch it at home today. And with my second watch, I learned a lot more. I figured out a lot of things, because the nice part about it, like I said, is that they don't really feed a whole bunch to you. And from what I'm to understand, the book's a lot like that too. Just kind of lets you kind of start to fill in the gaps a little bit yourself, as it then also expands out and lets you know a little bit more about those things. And that's what this felt like. But there were also some odd times where, like, for example, with the sword, talking about the the little barrier, the shield that you put on, right?
Yes.
And how, like, a fast thing doesn't do anything, but, like, slow, that'll go ahead and penetrate it. And they show it to us visually, and then they decide to have Josh Brolin do a little ADR, which I guess they probably just had some screenings, and they're like, we don't understand this. So they decided to feed it to you, despite having shown you several times exactly how that works. There's a couple of moments in there that are even,
are you talking about when Josh Brolin says the slow blade penetrates the shield?
Right. That's an ADR line.
That is an iconic line, though.
Yeah, but I don't know that, like,
that's like live long and prosper, may the force be with you. I mean, that is like, am I wrong there, Sean? I mean,
no, it's one of the things.
Okay,
yeah, then it's like if you see a fellow Dooner, I don't know, what do you call? You have Trekkies and
Doonies.
So you see somebody and you like get
Doonies never die.
Yeah, he's wearing his sandworm baseball cap. And you just wink and nod and go, slow blade penetrates the shield. He goes, slow blade penetrates the shield.
Okay.
And you move on.
And so I'll move my statement then and say, why didn't you have a single of him saying that instead of just, dialogue of him when he's off screen?
He was drunk that day, so he couldn't get it down. He kept slurring his speech and had to do it in post.
But speaking of that exact same scene, and how you may not be as far wrong as you might think, because I watched that scene the second time again, and I'm like, what is he doing? And then, like, post that scene, he's fine. But like he's
When a
doing
guy's
some
got
sort of
Thanos-
weird accent or something. I don't know what's going on in that first scene.
When a guy's got Thanos money, he can show up however he wants to shoot. I don't know.
I just thought it was like, I'm like, what's going on here? And then he's fine after that. But that first little segment there, I thought was strange. I didn't know Stellan Skarsgård was in this. I love that kind of the wild, crazy fat suit and everything. And I went through thinking that was about 5 different actors because that's how good he was at this. I'm like, is it this person? No. I'm like, I think it's Stellan Skarsgård, but it might not be. Who could be somebody else because of all the makeup.
I mean,
and
I had seen the cast ahead of time, so I knew it was him. And then when I saw him, I thought, well, I must be thinking of the wrong Skarsgård because, there's 12 of them or something.
Yeah.
But no, it was Eric Selvig, man.
And they're not even all in the same family. That's the weird part.
It's like Smith over there in Norway or wherever they're from.
I love Javier Bardem's just like one of those great weirdo actors who I just like.
He sure is.
Even in like, I hate what he did in Skyfall, but like I kind of
Really?
I like his nerve to do it. But
because I thought it was like, I mean, it's a Bond movie. You got to be a little ridiculous, and I thought he was ridiculous. He was kind of like doing his version of Heath Ledger's Joker.
Yeah, sometimes it's just it's like, okay, I understand that you had a funky, weird little haircut in No Country, and that like we need to do that for all the things, and like you like looking super strange and making people go like, what country is he from? Is he he's a weird kind of guy, and he is, but he's really great at it. He's a great weirdo actor, and I love him.
I like to think his driver's license expired in the middle of No Country for Old Men. He had to go to the DMV and get a driver's license photo with that haircut and carry it in his wallet for like 10 years.
But he's really good. I think Zendaya is like a great casting, at least at this point, because
her role hasn't started yet.
Exactly, but she has such a very interesting look that you can't stop looking at that girl. She's a very attractive young lady, and like
it's like that National Geographic cover of that girl that they took the picture of in the
from Afghanistan. And I know you haven't read the books, Adam, but I'm going to spoil this for you a little bit. In the next movie, when Paul Atreides becomes Spider-Man, you'll see why they cast her.
Sweet. I'm waiting for this.
I do like it that Villeneuve decided that the Fremen who live on this desert planet shouldn't look like Sean Young.
Yeah, agreed.
Because Sean Young played Zendaya's character in the David Lynch one.
Oh man. Yeah, it's a little different. But I thought that was, she was a great addition to this and everything. But to me, the world building is what really made all of this. And the fact that they give you enough information, and upon second watch, because I know names now, I have information. I have like holes that are already kind of filled in from having watched it.
Plus, I'm like your living Dune Wikipedia from my childhood, so you can always text me.
Yeah, what is this about? But now, overall, I think it was just really great. It moves along for 2.5 hours. Like, I never really felt bored, but I can understand how somebody who may not have patience for slow sci-fi could be bored out of their mind. But to me, it's just like just sitting back in a nice warm sci-fi bath and just letting it flow over you.
Well, it's like talking to my children about Squid Game because I'm almost through it. I'm on the 8th
Oh my
episode
goodness,
now.
Everybody, stop the presses. I finished Squid Game at least a week and a half before Sean. Woo.
I know. And
man.
So I'm talking to them about it, and I'm like, look, if you haven't seen this show, like, you should totally see it. It's so up your alley to both girls. And what I got back from them was, oh, I love that show, but it is slow at times. There's too much talking at times on that show. And all I kept thinking was like, you just want high tension for the entire time you're watching this for 9 hours.
They don't understand adrenaline fatigue because it gets boring if you don't take breaks.
I want 9 hours of white knuckle action.
Hey, tell them if they want that, Fast and Furious 9 is still in some theaters. And trust me, Squid Game's probably better. I haven't seen Squid Game, but
thankfully, I think both my children are Dominic Toretto free.
Oh, if only my family were.
Ask your doctor if you've got Dominic Toretto.
So neither of you have ever read The Wheel of Time. That's a safe assumption, right?
Yes.
Because when The Wheel of Time comes out on Amazon, I hope both of you check it out. And I'm curious to see if you can feel the Dune influence on that.
Now, Was that the book that you were telling me that my brother has read at least one of those things? Because
when I was 14 books in the series.
When I was, and you mentioned you were just like, oh, if you saw these books or whatever. When I house sat for him a couple weeks ago, in his bathroom is one of those books, and I picked it up and looked at it. That bad boy was so thick, I put that right back down. I was like, no sirree, Bob, that's way too much work.
What's he use this for? Killing cockroaches?
I guess.
Yeah, but The Wheel of Time is my favorite book series of all time, hands down. And watching this movie, I realized just how much influence Frank Herbert had to have on Robert Jordan. And so it'll be kind of cool to talk about that. I'm glad that you guys, I know you probably would have known it whether you'd seen the movie or not, Sean, but this movie really opened my eyes up to it contextually more than reading the Dune Encyclopedia did. But
I got a story and everything. What do you know?
Don't say.
But they have sort of their own version of the Bene Gesserit. I'm never quite sure how to pronounce that, but they kind of have their own version of the Bene Gesserit in The Wheel of Time. And then they have a man wielding a power that's only supposed to be wielded by women. They have these desert dwelling people called the Aiel that are very much like the Fremen, and they rally behind Rand as his personal army, the same way the Fremen are going to rally behind Paul. I mean, I'm just watching this and saying, why did that never click before? But it really makes me want to go back and read Dune because I love Wheel of Time so much.
I will say that for me, at least the 20-year-old version of me, it was tough to get past the names at times, but you aren't going to have that problem since you know all the names already because you read them probably like from a phone book.
Yes.
I tell you what,
almost like a phone book too, an entry.
Why are the names so close? Why the Atreides and the other one? I mean, Arrakis isn't even the only name that's used for that planet.
No.
But many people call the planet Dune. So if you want to just call the planet Dune, only the most pedantic jerk would correct you on that. It's like the person who kind of knows Dune will say, actually, the planet's Arrakis. But the person who really knows Dune says, well, actually, it's Dune or Arak or other names.
Or
you can call it Dune. Yeah. Other than Arrakis and Atreides, I mean, come on. You watch Game of Thrones, didn't you, Adam?
No, a season and a half.
Turleys, Tyrells, and Tarleys. I mean, my goodness. Game of Thrones is like that, too. Yeah.
No, you're not wrong.
Wheel of Time is like that, too. You got more Gays and Moraine and Egwene and Elaine. I mean, it's ridiculous. Writers love to make sure you're paying attention.
Yeah. Call yours Planet Marvin or something. I don't know. Just something else that's going to be a little bit different. Not another A title. Come on now. That's a little bit crazy. All right, before we get to our final review here and everything, we have to ask ourselves one very important question, is how this sci-fi epic relates back one-to-one with Sylvester Stallone.
Why, thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement.
Oh.
Hello, Mr. Stallone. Do you know Tom Brown? I ask because Tom Brown was the supervising art director on Dune. Why is there a supervising art director? Well, you need one of those on a movie that has 6 art directors. That's how important the art matters on a movie like Dune. That's how important the art is on a movie like Dune. Working on such a high-profile movie isn't a big deal for Tom Brown because way back in 1983, Tom Brown was introduced to the movie business, and he has probably the best 4-movie run of anyone in movies ever. Here are his first 4: Octopussy, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Legend, and Labyrinth. Now, maybe you like those movies, maybe you don't, but Mr. Stallone, you have to admit, working in the art department on all 4 of those movies must have been amazing. But Tom Brown couldn't stop there. He bagged himself a Spielberg a second time with Saving Private Ryan. He went on to work on a show called Farscape, which is the only sci-fi show to ever be made for the price of a ham sandwich that also people talked about. And it costs way less money than your random episode of Love After Lockup. Then in 2014, he worked with you in the movie Expendables 3, the movie that caused the rift between you and Bruce Willis when he asked for $1 million a day for his role in that movie. Is Bruce Willis worth $1 million a day? Well, I have a pretty controversial opinion about this topic. No, he isn't. So you get Harrison Ford last minute, which is probably the biggest Hollywood power move in the last 20 years. And I have to be honest, Mr. Stallone, you can just call up Harrison Ford and he shows up like a clown at a birthday party. I didn't know you could do that. It seems like something only a wizard or an enchantress could pull off. Dune isn't even the first movie Tom Brown worked on this year. Earlier, he worked on the movie Venom, Let There Be Carnage, which everyone can agree is a movie that isn't awful, but also isn't great. Tom Brown was also the production designer on Bloodshot, a movie that the three row boys of HMP were hoping wasn't the last movie we'll ever see in the movie theater. And sweet baby Jesus, it wasn't. Whew. Tom Brown is currently working on Wonka, the prequel to a movie that everyone thinks is a great idea and is no way controversial at all. And I'm sure people will have many opinions about that movie. But one thing everyone will be able to agree on is the art direction being amazing, because Tom Brown is an amazing art director. And there it is, Mr. Stallone. This week's Stallone Connection is supervising art director Tom Brown. I'll try to do better next week. Hope to hear from you soon. Your pal, Sweet Chauncey from the internet.
Bruce, can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I love this guy. You want to know why? He didn't go for the easy one. You could easily just go, oh, he was with Dave DeSmalchin 2 weeks ago in Suicide Squad. Thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye. But no. Sweet Chauncey does the work.
Nice.
That's why he's good. That's why he's good.
It's just a better story.
It is. It is.
I'm looking for better stories.
Not for nothing.
I'll just note, Sean, I didn't get any pat on the back for Shilton manuals, so.
I did, like once you started talking about it, I did remember what those were, because I know what you're talking about. All right, so let's get down to it here at Here Movie Podcast. We have our own patented Robin rating system. Bruce, where does Dune 2021 fall in the Robin rating system for you?
I'm honestly just going to say this is one of the purest Dick Graysons I've seen in a while. I love this movie. I can't wait to watch it again. I can't wait till the future installment comes out. There's a part of me that's really, really afraid everything's going to fall apart and we never get that next movie, because that just happens sometimes when I really want something. I'd feel better if they had done the whole back-to-back filming, but they let everybody go about their business and get other jobs. And now they're going to try to rope them all back in at the same time. So I'm real worried about the sequel coming out in 20 years or something.
All right.
But yeah, Dick Grayson, I love it.
Dick Grayson. Sean, what do you got?
This is a Tim Drake for me. And the only reason why is because we haven't seen the whole thing yet. We don't know how they're going to stick the landing. We don't know if there's going to be a landing to stick. And so for that, it's a Tim Drake. But if it's like this movie, it will be a Dick Grayson. This is something that it just feels so lived in and real and beautiful, and it's smart, and it doesn't treat you like an idiot. I like everything about this movie. It's a Tim Drake.
Yeah, for me, I'm going a very high Tim Drake on this for the exact same reason as Sean. It's like I feel like there is definitely a good chance that once this story is completed, you'll look back and be like, you know what, this movie's even better than I had originally realized and everything. And again, I liked it a little bit more my second watch, and that was at home. I want to do one more time in the theater where I don't have seats that are shake, rattle, and rolling all over the place. But I've just really, really astounded about how much I really like this. Again, not for nothing, I just got to stab him a little bit here, but Dave Bautista's kind of done in my book as far as I'm concerned. He really wants to be The Rock, but at least The Rock, while not a good actor, is super charismatic. Batista seems to be doing the same thing in everything, and it's just I'm so over it at this point. But yet he wants to be treated like this really big thespian and everything, and I'm just not seeing it. But that's just the one complaint I had to throw in there, because it is what it is. But very high Tim Drake. I like this a lot for not knowing anything going in. This does feel like that sci-fi Lord of the Rings adult sci-fi that I've kind of been looking for, and that really Villeneuve's the guy who's been delivering that for the last couple of years and stuff. So when they said this is what he was doing, I'm all aboard it, and I'm all aboard for doing more of this. And I think them actually putting part one in that main title and everything shows me at least Warner Brothers had enough of a kind of we think this is probably going to do pretty well. And according to the box office, it looks like it's on its way to doing quite well, being one of his most successful films. So thanks to the overseas people for that one, because you guys are footing the big bills on that one, which is great.
Well, you saw what happened to History of the World Part 1. I'm still waiting on that sequel.
Oh, you don't want to know.
Oh, we've got good luck.
Yeah, well,
I've got some good news for you.
Yeah, Bruce. There's some very good news if that indeed is your stance, because it looks like we're getting a sequel, actually.
Directed by David Lynch?
Probably. Well, that'll do it, everybody, for this week's episode of Hero Movie Podcast. We'll talk about what we're doing next week in just a moment. Until then, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
I love it when people go check out my YouTube channel. You know, I'm always trying to get more and more folks to check out my anime coverage over there. Going strong into Attack on Titan and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. We'll have new Attack on Titan episodes in January, new Demon Slayer episodes in December. So go ahead and get caught up before the crazy time gets here. And Anime IO is on Spotify now. But if you're listening to this, you probably don't listen to your podcasts on Spotify, so never mind.
Yeah, it's all right. I got problems with Spotify. Anyways, Sean, what corners are you going to be busking at this week?
You're going to be able to hear my brass band play Bobby Brown, Bobby Brown's greatest hits at the corner of Church and Tryon. No, we're
Ghostbusters 2 theme song. Here we come.
My prerogative. I hope you like my prerogative, because heard by a brass band, it's amazing. Anyway, we have a podcast called 30 Questions, where we ask 30 questions of each episode of some nerdy property. The last one, what was the last one we did? It's been so long now in my brain.
It was the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, maybe?
Loki,
maybe?
Yeah.
Loki. And we're not sure what do we know what the next 30 questions is going to be?
Mandalorian, probably.
Oh, Mandalorian is like 2023.
No, well,
Boba
Fett,
we were
whatever.
supposed to.
Whatever that thing is going to be, whatever the
Book of Boba Fett.
Book of Boba Fett, if that's like your season 3 Mandalorian, which it may not be from what this.
It's what I'm hearing is it's not at all.
Okay.
Well, that'll probably be our next one, is Book of Boba Fett.
So we'll do all
Right
those,
there.
but just go out and search 30 questions on your podcatcher. There, you'll likely find all that kind of good stuff. Next week we're going to be talking about we're going a little bit. We're pulling a Simpsons Treehouse of Horror because Dune dropped on this week, so we pushed our Halloween selection to next week into November. But it's the 1st of November. While you're having your Halloween hangover and shoving some candy in your face, you can listen to our review of Bride of Boogedy. That's right. We recorded. Who was it that I did? Was it just you, Bruce, that we did the Mr.
No, it was
Boogedy?
just you and
I.
I couldn't remember.
But you did with me and Chris. You did the Bride of Boogedy Chubby Wizard episode.
Yes, so you'll go check out Chubby Wizard for that one. But we'll be doing Bride of Boogedy, and we'll get Bruce's thoughts on the first one.
I will say, I think that you were floored by the fact that I really liked Mr. Boogedy. Like you were gobsmacked.
It really,
I
I was just like, I'm gonna have to deal with him for an hour of being very, very upset.
Just a little heads up, guys. If you haven't seen it before, Bride of Boogedy has twice the running length.
Oh yeah,
of Mr. Boogedy.
You can make this your Dune if you watch Mr. Boogedy and Bride of Boogedy. I'm probably gonna do a double feature if I'm not honest with you. We'll talk about it.
Some heroes don't wear capes.
You got that right. Doggone it. So we'll be talking about Bride of Boogedy next week. That is currently on Disney Plus. We will see you next time. For Sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet, Bruce Leslie, I'm Anna Porcher. Stay super, everybody.
Everybody talking. Bye, Marty and Evie. All this stuff about me. Why don't they just let me live?
Tell me why.
That was my tromboner imitation.
It's the way that I wanna live. It's my prerogative. I can do just what I feel. It's my prerogative. Nobody can tell me what to do. It's my prerogative. 'Cause what I'm doing for you now. Don't get me wrong, I'm really not suited. Ego trips is not my thing. All these strange relationships really gets me down. I see nothing wrong with spreading myself around. Everybody's talking all this stuff about me. Yeah. Don't they just let me live? Tell me why. I don't need can do what I wanna do. It's my life. Can live my life. It's my life. I'm doing it just for you. It's my life. Tell me, why can't I live my life without all of the things that people say? Yo, Teddy, kick it like this. Out now, I can do what I wanna do. Me and you, together. Everybody's talking. Why don't they just let me live? Girl? I don't need permission from nobody. That's my Everybody's talking. Everybody's talking. Just let me live. Now I don't need permission. I don't need my own decision. What is this, a blizzard that I can't have money in my pocket and people not talk about me? This world is a trip. I don't know what's going on these days. Got this person over here talking about me, this person. Hey, listen, let me tell you something. This is my prerogative. I can do what I want to do. I made this money, you didn't. Right, Ted?